Well, here we are. And wasn't it great to see those kids up here? Could you tell they all had different personalities and temperaments? I mean, it was obvious. It's such a great thing to see that in their lives and as they grow up. Now, I know a lot of you are parents, some of you grandparents, some of you, you don't have kids, you're not married, but you have friends or you have coworkers, have people you go to school with. All of this has to do with why we are doing this series. Because we have been placed here with people who have been made in the image of God. People around us, everybody you see, every person that's ever been born, all made in the image of His likeness. And so when we know that's true, then it should affect the way we interact with them. It should be something very important. So we want to look at God's principles to know exactly how should we be interacting with each other and with the people around us. So it's important that we know this and do this. That's why we're doing this series. And it's because, it'd be great if we were just here and everybody got along and that everybody just intermixed and no problem, it would be wonderful. What a wonderful world it would be, right? I should write a song about that. So anyway, the whole idea though is I said this, you heard that, is exactly the problem. Is as many times I will say something and someone else across from me will hear something completely different. Whether it's by text or whether it's a conversation, it may be something that's put on social media, it may be something put in an email, it may be, voice to voice, whatever, but we actually go through this continually where there's conflict between people. And so I believe if God uniquely made us and He knows each one of us, and that's the way He's made us, then we ought to be able to find principles that He's given so that we can actually interact. Because we all have a problem. It's called sin. It involves doing the wrong thing all the time. And so we want to try to correct that. God has a way of being able to work in our lives, help us get along with other people, even when they don't want us to. All right, so we're gonna explore all of that. So you kind of probably picked yourself out. I'm going to use these guys a little bit here today just to illustrate a few things and to get us thinking about it. But I want to remind you of the main point that we started out with last week, and it's this. You've been made by God to be uniquely who you are. Every person in this room is unique. Every person was given the makeup of who you are, your personality, your soul, your spirit, your body, all of that, and your temperament. And that temperament is one of the things that helps us interact. It's how we're wired. It's how we're put together. It's how we think. And God has done it by putting His fingerprint on us by the way He created us and gave us that temperament. And so it's good for us to understand and know what those are so that when we interact with other people, we're doing it from a perspective of really what God wants us to know about them. And you'll see what's helpful and beneficial. So not only this, one of the things that happens, though, when we are unique, it means that unique me and unique you can have some problems at times. What do I do when unique me is in conflict with unique you? What do I do when that happens? When your husband or your wife or your best friend or not so best friend or maybe that coworker that's in the cubicle next to you and that at work, or maybe it's that person that you have to work with in a parent organization at school, or maybe it's somebody who sits across from you in class that annoys you or you annoy them. Well, what do you do to deal with that, and how do you interact with them and still remain a good person doing the right thing? How do you do that? And that's really what it comes down to. What is doing the right thing? What's it look like? What is the right thing to do? What is the right thing for us to do? That should be the question we ask about any situation or any circumstance. We ought to be thinking about what is the right thing. So we're going to kind of make that the theme as we talk about this. And I want you to keep that in your mind as we get closer to the end. And as we do, we're going to answer that question. What is the right thing? Because when doing this, and we come up across conflict between unique you and unique me, what do? How do we handle it? Well, you either keep the peace or you make peace. It's one of the two. And let me just give you an idea what the difference is. They're very different. Keeping the peace is when you're restraining yourself, and making peace is when you're humbling yourself. Or you might think of it this way even. Keeping the peace maintains the conflict, and making peace concludes the conflict. It actually brings it to a conclusion. And most of us, that's really what we would want. But too many times, we try to keep peace. We keep it at bay. And sometimes the personality type that we are, or the temperament type that we are, many times we will cause that conflict to go on. And instead of making peace, we just keep peace. And so today, we're going to look at some things that will hopefully get us to a point to know how we can make peace instead of just keeping it. Because let's think about it. Anytime you're keeping the peace, people who keep the peace, what do? They have weapons in their hands, don't they? To keep the conflict at bay and control the circumstance. Whereas when people who make peace, what do? They sit down, they sign agreements, and they shake hands, and they go on without conflict anymore and try to work together. So that's really what we want to see happen. That's God's plan. That's the hope that God brings to any relationship, is that we can make peace. So I want to take you to a passage of Scripture, and it's in Ephesians chapter 4. This actually is one of the key verses that you're going to find in the study that is going to be available that I mentioned before. If you want to be in one of those small groups, you come to Group Link next week. You'll meet some people, and you'll get a chance to go through this study. And it's really, really great. You find out a little more about yourself, but you also find out about who God is in your life and then how to interact with other people. And so it's really great. It's a good study. I encourage you to do it. But in that study, they use this verse as the foundation of it. But I want you to know the background. In Ephesians, Paul was writing to a group of believers in a church, and he was trying to help them remember how important unity is, especially when it comes to what you believe and the things that are so core. So this group of Christ followers had forgotten what the core things were that they had in common. The fact that they believed in a resurrected Jesus, that he had come back to life after dying for their sin, and that he was there for them. It was an amazing thing that they should have been unified over, but it was causing conflict. Can you believe that? Church people not getting along. So it was kind of one of these things. It was like, how can we make this change? And so here's what he does. He comes down to this point, and he gives some instruction about our interaction and the way we talk with each other. Just the way we talk, the words that come out of our mouth. So this is what he says in verse 29. Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths. That's pretty straightforward, isn't it? I mean, it doesn't really give you a whole lot of wiggle room around what the statement's about. It tells you not to let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths. And I might say even, we could probably stretch that a little bit to say even out of your fingers, right? On a keyboard. So you get the idea. Unwholesome means unhealthy. It means unhelpful, all right? So that's the kind of concept. Unwholesome means that you take away anything beneficial, anything good from it. And he says, don't do that kind of talk. Stay away from that kind of talk. But only talk, and this is kind of the concept, only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs. In other words, I'm going to look at who that person is, how God uniquely made them. I'm going to know what their needs are. And then when I speak to them, I'm going to do something helpful to help encourage them or build them up. I'm going to make sure that what I say builds them up in their faith, but also just builds them up in a faith. Because here's what happens. If you tear people down and use unwholesome talk, all you're doing is giving them a reason to either walk away from faith or to set it aside or treat it carelessly. And so he says, you want to do whatever's helpful. But on top of that it may benefit those who listen. You ever thought of the words that you say are beneficial? Do the words that you say are beneficial? I've heard it stated that every person on average, now some people a lot more, some people a lot less, say 16,000 words in a day. Okay? That's how many words you say. On average. Some less, like I said, some more. And we all know who the more people are. Okay? And so you kind of get the idea, right? But if that were the case, in the average book, it's about 250 pages, 16,000 words a day, 250 pages in a book. That means if we wrote down everything we said, we would have written 100 books a year just based on the words that we say. Now imagine that. All of those words, what do they have? Mine have a recurring theme. Mine always have a recurring theme. Where's your glasses? Where's your wallet? Where's your cell phone? That's over and over again questions that I say out loud all the time. So those would be in all of my books. All right? But you kind of get the idea, right? Unwholesome talk. Do we want our lives filled with unwholesome words and talk? Because we want it to be helpful and beneficial to meet the needs of people around us. That's really God's purpose in interacting with each other, is to be helpful and beneficial. It's not for us. Matter of fact, anytime you see something about the situation, it's always about other people, not about us. So it's kind of a cool thing to think about. Now, if we were looking at this, and we go back to this book that was written by Kathleen Edelman. Kathleen is the one who is responsible for the I Said This, You Heard That material that's being used next door in Raising Great Kids right now in the community group that's meeting, and also in the groups that we'll have during the summer. So this is what she said. We're responsible for bringing out the best in each other. I know you ever thought of that being the case, but you're responsible. A lot of times we look at other people and blame them for the circumstances of the situation. Rarely do we ever look at ourselves and say, maybe I'm the problem here. Rarely do we ever say, maybe I'm the one that's causing the problem. Maybe I'm the one causing the conflict and the situation having no peace about it. And so in this, it gives us the responsibility. I really like her statement. Because God has given us each this temperament, these types of who we are. And each one of them represents His handiwork. It's how He's wired you. It's the way He's put His fingerprint on you. And think of it this way too. He's made some of you extroverts and He made some of you introverts. And the introvert yelled out? Why? Wow, that's a miracle in itself. All right, so you get the idea, right? All right, so if God has created us all like this, then there's some things we need to understand about each one of these. And so I want to walk you through it. Actually, these terms that we're speaking of here, like I said before, they came about by Hippocrates in the year 400 BC when considering the person's soul and spirit, came up with these Greek terms of each one of these. So let's just kind of go through each one and I'll show you. Sanguines. The sanguines are represented by the color yellow, and that's a good reason because yellow is bright and out there and all kinds of things. They're the office optimist. Do you know who that is? How many of you would say, I was the yellow, I answered the sanguine questions? Okay, that's you. And you're also the attention magnet. So in other words, if everybody's not focused on you, you'll be sure that they are. Okay? So if there's not a party going on, by the time you're there for a couple of minutes, there will be once you've entered the room, okay? But that's more who a sanguine is. And you have to understand that about them. They thrive on attention. They're able to see the best in people and in the circumstances, and they inspire people. They love to do that. And then we have the cholerics. And the cholerics are red. We need choleric people, all right? This is necessary because they're the ones who will take charge. They're the visionary decision makers. They know where they're going, when they're going, and how they're going, and who's going to take care of the circumstances. That's somebody who's red, all right? They're a choleric. And we need them because you got to have somebody, because if there wasn't a choleric in the group, there would always be parties and no one would care, okay? And so they're also, though, known as the office bully. And they tend to be looked at as if, they're the ones that kind of come in and pound the table and say, this is the way it is. They make all the decisions, but they know that if they make all the decisions, they'll be the right ones, okay? So that's the choleric. And then we have the melancholics. Oh, I'm sorry. No. The phlegmatics. Got that backwards there, okay? So the phlegmatics they're the kind diplomat. They're the ones that are just laid back. They're able to steer people and projects toward compromise. That's what they like. They like everybody to be happy around them. They want everybody they want to be peacemakers among them. And they're the enthusiastic procrastinator. They're happy if they can, what's good to do today is good to do 3 weeks from now. Okay? And so that's just, they're enthusiastic about it and don't have a problem doing it. You know what? It's a good thing we have green people, because otherwise the cholerics would run us into the dirt and the sanguines would laugh at us. So, okay? So it's so important that the phlegmatics are there, because they kind of calm things down and make it easy to do. And matter of fact, it's pretty important that we have all of these. So critical. But then, if you go then to the blue, and this is the melancholics, and they're the thoughtful analyzer. They're the ones that like to know all the details, and when they're giving details, they give you more details than you really need. Okay? I see some of you giggling and laughing, like you know that this is you. And I don't know whether you know this or not, but about 75% of the population of any human group of people, any country, any place, are primarily in this. 75% of people are either blue or green. All right? So when you think of it from a blue standpoint and you look at how it is, they assume usually, though, the worst in the situations. They always go to the negative, like it's going to fall apart. They're kind of skeptical about things, and they have to know the details before they know for sure. So they tend to be the judgmental skeptic. They look at people, and they'll judge them based on what they see, and they have a hard time forgetting that. Okay? Once they see them that way, they can't see them another way. So that's the blue. All right? So you take a look at all of these and how they come together, and this is quite important. I want to illustrate these if I can. All right? So I'm going to take a couple here, and I'm going to take this one, and I'm going to show you some illustration of what I'm talking about, of how these come together and how God has made these two people. These are actual human beings that I'm going to represent here. And for the sake of the illustration, let's name them a person who's a little bit of both of these. Okay? Primarily red, but a little yellow at times. Let's name them, for the sake of the illustration, Greg. All right? And for the sake of the illustration, let's illustrate a wife of Greg named Charlene. Okay? Now, here they are, most of the time, very happy people, all right? Very happy people. But the problem is with these people, at times, they have conflict. Let me illustrate. They recently went on a vacation together. Yay! And when they went on a vacation, they went to their favorite place, the beach, all right? And when they're on the beach, they're sitting there talking about things. And the blue Charlene says to the red-yellow Greg, you know, I have noticed the waves are really rough today. Yes, I know. You know why they're that way? No, I don't. It's because of the gravitational pull of the moon on the earth. And what happens is the gravitational pull... did I ask for that? I didn't ask for that. So you kind of get the idea, right? Okay? So... red, yellow Greg gives up because finally she says she doesn't want to hear anymore. And so what ends up happening is that later they have lunch and they pull out an orange. She says, would you like an orange? Of course I would like an orange. So I take the orange. I should say, Greg takes the orange and he says, now this represents the moon. And you see my hand represents the earth. And this is how, and she immediately says, it's time for a walk. Okay? That kind of gives you that idea. Another one that really kind of stood out to us was really, really rather funny. Right before we went on vacation, it wasn't too long, a friend observed us from afar. That we didn't know they were there, but they saw us in the grocery store together. And they saw us walk in. And as we're walking in, Blue Charlene has her list on her cell phone with her coupons and everything ready to do whatever she needed to do. And so, and you were made by God. It's a great thing. So, and she comes in, she's detailed, she knows, she set the alarm for when they all need to leave. And so, as they're coming in, she is preparing that and walking into the store while primarily red and a little yellow Greg comes in and he looks and observes the fact that the grocery store had not emptied the trash cans for, it looks like, 2 days. And he's very annoyed at that and even thought about going and actually getting a trash bag and emptying it for them. And so instead of doing that, because Blue Charlene said, we don't have time for that, he walks in and says, and she's ready. She's going to produce to get everything she needs from her list, as is red and yellow Greg comes in, looks around and says, do I see anybody here I know? And as he looks around to see if he knows anybody, he says, no, I don't know anybody, but there's someone who is not with someone and they need a new friend. Okay. All right, so now you kind of got the idea, right, of how this all works. And I had 100% permission to do all of that today. So here's the thing. Whenever we interact this way and our differences come out, what can happen? It doesn't matter whether it is with a spouse or whether it's with your children or whether it's with a friend or someone you work with or go to school with. It makes no difference who they are. If you allow, though, your differences to actually become something that separates you, then you will be keeping peace rather than making peace. And you really want to do the right thing. What is the right thing when it comes to this? Well, it might be to understand the needs of each one of these people. This is what I would encourage you to think about. Every person has needs in their life, legitimate needs that God has placed in their lives for us as other people to meet. We're here to be the ones to meet those needs, not to lay blame on them for their needs, not to say they're weak because of their needs, but to actually step in and be helpful and beneficial. And so whenever you look at it, a person who's yellow, a sanguine here that is usually the life of the party, they need approval and they need acceptance and attention and affection. So if you know somebody who's a yellow, maybe that person that you have a problem with right now or a conflict with, and they are that way, maybe consider meeting their needs. What about a choleric, somebody who's red? God's created them to need loyalty in their life and a sense of control. And quite honestly, we need them to be in control from time to time. And they need to be appreciated for what they do, and they need credit for the work that they do. It's so important. And if they don't get that, then they have difficulty in their life. But if we understand those needs and we reach out to them and we try to meet those needs, imagine it will be beneficial for them. Someone who's green, they're just looking for harmony. They're looking for a feeling of worth. They want a lack of stress. They don't want stress. Listen, if you're a red parent and you're trying to take care of a green child, especially someone who's beginning to get to a point of being an independent person on their own, got to tell you, this is kind of important because this can be a major conflict. This can be a real problem because a parent comes in and expects it done now, and the green says, look, I just help me out here. I got these going on. Maybe a little harmony between the two of you or something, or some creative way to work together rather than bringing about the conflict. And then, of course, the blue, they need safety. They need to know that everything around them is safe and secure, that they don't have to worry. They're very sensitive. Their feelings, they wear them out on their sleeve sometimes. At least it feels, but sometimes it's really good that they do that because they bring emotion to a situation that needs it desperately. And they need support. They need to know that somebody's got their back. They need to know that that's an important part of their life. And then sometimes they just need space and silence or a walk away from the conversation about the gravitational pull of the earth. All right, on the moon. Right? And so it's so important that we look at other people and we consider what their needs are based on who God created them to be and how unique they are. Yes, it takes a little bit of time and everything, but let me just show you this, why it's so important. Because James, as a writer in the Bible, he gave us some clarity about how to do this because there was a group of people who were followers of Jesus that were being scattered because of their faith and what they believed. And so he asks this big dynamic question, and I got to say, is this not a question for today or what? Who is wise and understanding among you? I mean, do we not need the answer to this question? Who is wise and understanding among you? And he gives the answer. He comes with clarity in the next verse. He says, this is who's wise and understanding. Let them show it by their good life, by deeds done in the humility that comes from wisdom. This is something that doesn't matter what temperament you are. Wisdom is something that everyone needs to understand how to deal with each other. And quite honestly, when it talks about this, the good life, it really comes down to that understanding of what is the right thing to do. How do you deal with other people? What's the right way to do it? By deeds done in humility. Stepping back and humbling yourself. It's not about me. See, God created us to interact with each other on purpose. And if we really are honest, we realize that life really isn't about us. It's really about God and other people. And so his principles, not mine, not some psychologist that put together some idea of personalities or temperaments or anything like that, has nothing to do with that. This is God who created us. His plan was for us to be all about him and all about others. And when we are, then we get life right. We get it right. But the verses go on, and this is really great. But if you harbor bitter envy and selfish ambition in your hearts, do not boast about it or deny the truth. In other words, if you have bitter envy for somebody else because they are a certain way or they act, they have things that you don't, or, that you wish you were like them or you had something of theirs, or maybe it's because they're doing something and you're envious of them because they became a leader or they're always the life of the party and you don't feel that way, or they're an extrovert and I'm just an introvert and I'm not very important, or likewise, I'm an introvert and why are these extroverts in charge? And, you get the idea, right? It's easy for us to have bitter envy and even selfish ambition. How can I take who I am and try to bolster myself and make myself look good in front of other people so that then I can get my point across? He says, look, if you do this, you're boasting about yourself and you're really denying the truth of what God can do in a person's life when he changes you. But then it goes on, such wisdom, okay, such wisdom does not come down from heaven, but it is earthly, unspiritual, and wow, what a big word, demonic. Comes right from the evil one, our enemy, the one that we are told to put on armor against. It comes from him. Whenever we act this way, when we have bitter envy and we have selfish ambition, we think more about our needs than we do the needs of other people. But then, verses continue on. He says, for where you have envy and selfish ambition, there you find disorder and evil practice. In other words, chaos. It's barely keeping peace at that point. And conflict is all around us. Do you want to live this way? I don't want to live this way. I don't want my life to be, summed up by disorder and evil practice. But then he makes a change, and he says, but the wisdom that comes from heaven is first of all pure. It's then peace-loving, considerate, submissive, full of mercy and good fruit, impartial and sincere. It'd be easy to dismiss any one of these and say, I can do them all except that. And we can base it on who we are in our temperament. We can even say, I can't really be considerate because I'm red. Or I'm blue. I can't be considerate. I have to be forthright. That's who God made me. No, it's not an excuse to do the wrong thing. Knowing your temperament and the needs of other people is an excuse to do the right thing. See? And so when it all comes down to it, each one of these really embolden us to be who God made us to be, especially the word submissive and sincere. Doing it because it's from the heart, because it's from God in our lives. And so submissive right there tells you, I love that word the most because it tells you it's not about us, it's about other people, right? But then the last verse, and this is the one that really stands out to me and the one that I really want to emphasize the most. Peacemakers who sow in peace reap a harvest of righteousness. This is great. When you're a peacemaker, you sow. I thought about coming in here today and taking like rice or something and just like throwing it on the crowd. But then Ben told me that I better not do that. He's the guy who takes care of this building. And so peacemakers sow. They sow liberally. They do everything they can to pass on peace. The sense of God being present right where you are. That's what real peace is feeling God's presence right there with you, no matter what. And you can rely on that to give you the peace you need. And so, it's great. this peace, these peacemakers, they sow it, they put it out there, and they reap a harvest. And what's that harvest? They bring in a plentiful group of this, a bunch of this on a regular basis. Righteousness. And the word righteousness, I want to show you this. This is very important. Righteousness means when all is made right. When Jesus Christ died for us, we trust and believe in Him. He makes us righteous. He does that on our behalf. He makes it all right. He takes the wrong we've done and make it all right. So if that's the case, it's the right thing. Righteousness, if we are peacemakers, if we do what's necessary, we think of the needs of other people and what will help and what will benefit them, what takes place? Actually, righteousness, or making the right decision, doing the right thing. Not keeping peace, but making peace. It's an incredible thought. And so I leave you with this thought. Making peace is not about who is right, but doing what is right to help and benefit others. This is God's plan. This is what God would say is the way to work with people who are very different from you. People who have different needs. But the more we consider those needs and we think about who they are and what's going on in their lives, and we consider our children and our grandchildren and our co-workers and our spouse, and we consider the people who are the hardest to get along with, the people we maybe have the most conflict with, maybe our parents or maybe somebody that you are so close to, and it should be a good thing. It should be a model of peace. It's not right now because somehow someone has made more about who God made them to be a selfish thing rather than something that they're giving to other people. Say this with me so that I know that it's crossed your mind and your lips. Say it with me. Making peace is not about who is right, but doing what is right to help and benefit others. God's plan. It's the right thing. And when we do the right thing, that's when peace comes. As peacemakers, we have that opportunity. So, today I have something to challenge you with. All right? As a part of this, not only to take the step and become a part of a group and study this more so that you'll understand other people, and especially, couples and families and all that. Do it together. It would be great. Okay? I would encourage you. And we're going to give you all that detail of how to do it. When you come to Group Link or on opportunities, we'll show you that. But here's what I want to challenge you to do today. Everybody take out your phone. Some of you probably have it out already. You're maybe using it, going through the YouVersion notes or anything. I want you to go through your phone. I want you to get it out, and I want you to look at it, and I want you to pull up the contacts, okay? The contact list. Or perhaps maybe you could do it better here. Somebody gave me this idea. Maybe go to the messages that you've done, personal messages you've done on social media with somebody. Or maybe even posts that you've put on social media, and there have been people who have interacted with you, and it's been a conflict or a problem, okay? And I want you right now to consider this. I want you to consider, either from your contact list or whatever, texting them or messaging them right now while you're here, and saying, can we sit down and talk? Can I call you later? Could we get together maybe for dinner or coffee or something this week? Mom, Dad, could I call you later? I need to talk to you about something. And the whole goal would be to be a peacemaker, sowing the right thing and sharing with them and helping meet their need. Saying something to them that would be helpful and beneficial. God's plan. That's what it is, to be able to understand this. So before you leave this room, I'm going to ask you to do that and hit send. All right? That's the biggie. It's easy to type it out, but hit send. That's your challenge. See what God can do to bring peace.